I wanted to make a video that walks through my approach to ACT skills for OCD recovery, how to integrate that into exposure and response prevention, and some of the key ideas that I tend to use in my groups or with clients. I'm going to share a slide to sort of help with this. Um, so basically, at the top, we have the anatomy of OCD. So we have triggers, we have the obsessions, we have the compulsions, a little bit of detail on each one. So triggers can be really anything in our experience in the outside world or the internal world. Then we have obsessions, which are the automatic, intrusive thoughts. So they can be words, images, they can be more subtle or obvious, they can be sensations, feelings, impulses, or a combination of these different parts. And then we have the compulsions. We have the physical compulsions, we have the mental compulsions. I put autopilot or overt because I think sometimes compulsions can be so conditioned that we're doing them almost on autopilot, just like you can drive down the road and you suddenly realize you haven't been paying attention for the last 3 minutes or longer. I think the same thing can go on with compulsions. Uh, and then we're into how I work with these things. So at the bottom, the most important part of this is the ACT skills and compassion skills that I would use. So I've simplified them here, and you can find them all on the OCD skills playlist. So using drop and anchor to work these ACT skills of diffusion, so getting distance from the obsessions and being able to step back and observe them, let them come and go, letting go of the mental compulsion, so letting go of that experiential avoidance, so experiential avoidance process, as we would call it in ACT, of ruminating, worrying, analyzing, judging, checking, resenting, and so forth. We're then using acceptance of sensations, feelings, impulses, and urges, and then present moment attention, refocusing on valued actions, things that matter to us. Then we've got urge surfing. I've drawn that out as a important technique of its own. It's really building on dropping anchor, but it's targeting the urge, how the urge shows up in our thoughts and feelings. And then we are connecting to our motivation, our values, our goals, workability to get some motivation to resist and urge surf, to surf this wave of wanting to do the compulsion that then crests and comes down. And then I've got motivation here, so identifying our core values, our values, congruent goals, value domains, actions, people, compassion, workability. Then we've got this line of skills. If there is a lot of shame and self-criticism, if there's trauma, if there's historical factors or a difficult ongoing current context, then self-compassion and compassion being such a support. And then we've got the taking in the good skills, the savoring, the gratitude, connecting to valued directions, how we build up our life and fill it full of important, meaningful things, connection, and so forth. And then, these are the two areas of practice to work on the different parts of the OCD anatomy. So for the trigger and the obsession, we've got values-based exposure practice. This is using ERP ideas, but integrating ACT skills into it. ACT has always been an exposure therapy. Steve Hayes has been always linking it to exposure work, given his own experience of panic. And here we're thinking about imaginal exposure to things like triggers and images and words and scenes and the core fear. And then in the world exposure as well, out there, going to places, doing things, meeting people. And then in the world more passively, watching things, listening things, reading things. And then we're not just doing this stuff and just trying to do response prevention and trying to really trigger our anxiety and then either habituate or do inhibitory learning. No, we're trying to learn to use our ACT skills in response to the exposure work. The exposure work, the only function is to strengthen and deepen our ACT skills so that the OCD thoughts, the urges, and everything that makes up the anatomy is no longer a problem, and essentially we can let go of the compulsions. Um, in terms of the compulsions, where it's physical compulsions, we're doing more urge surfing, lots of stuff on the channel around urge surfing. So look at that. And then mental compulsions, dipping in and out of the stream, is a practice from Russ Harris. And this is one that I really like for activating mental compulsions, getting stuck in them and then letting them go, diffusing, stepping back, observing, and letting go of the active compulsion, feeling what that's like, refocusing on the world around us, what we're doing, and then going back into the stream, in and out, in and out. And you can see similar ideas in metacognitive therapy and other places as well. And this is really Russ drew from the work of Francisco Ruiz as well, and his research on worry and rumination for that kind of practice. So this is, in a nutshell, my core ideas. There's obviously more things we do, and obviously there's lots of resistance and secondary spikes and things that get in here to make this harder and less simple than it looks. And there's a context around OCD. There's the history, trauma history, attachment history, learning history, relationships, work, meaning and purpose, all these other things that sit around it that we would explore, and is very individual based in terms of how that might be feeding into the OCD system and stressing it out. But we want to be working all these different levels, understanding this first level, mapping it out, and along with historical factors, and then working these three pieces and doing it a lot until it becomes strong and resilient and able to help us when we're in really difficult places. So hopefully that's useful. Have a look at the videos on the channel that might show you the kind of roadmap. We'd start with stuff on the bottom, and then we'd move into dipping in and out the stream, and then into values-based exposure, and then be working all of those ideas. So yeah, let me know what you think, and hopefully that's useful.